Hello, hello, hello. As the title suggests, the best motorcycles of all time. Well, this is not true, because what I may think is the best, you may not think is the best, and what I think is the worst, you may think is the best, and what you think is the worst, I may think is the best. So instead, I'm going to do my personal top 10 favorite motorcycles of all time. These are motorcycles that I have either ridden, I've ridden all of them, and I've owned a few of them. So here goes. At number 10, the Minsk. The Minsk, that was made in the former Soviet Union in Belarusia, is a two-stroke motorcycle that is still very popular today in places like Vietnam. People that do off-road riding love them because they're very much an indestructible motorcycle. And not too expensive if you can find one on the second-hand market. In Vietnam, they were very cheap. I think I paid like $50 for the one that I had when I was traveling there. At the end of the trip, I decided to just give it to somebody. Wonderful, wonderful bike. At number 9, a bike that was made in the former German Democratic Republic. Yes, the Simson. And I made a note here of it. The Simson start from 1965. As you can see, very, very unusual looking bike. And there's another East German bike that's on here as well. And for some reason, the East Germans, all their bikes were pretty much two-stroke because of cost. It was cheaper to produce two-stroke bikes. And they all had this kind of like modern kind of space design to many of them. Well, just like this one, which I like very, very much. The next bike is the MZES 250. Now, the MZES 250 is also a bike that was made in the German Democratic Republic. And it's just, from a design standpoint, quite unique and very special looking. When I was in East Germany before 1989, I remember you couldn't buy any of these and bring them to Western Europe. It was just impossible. After the wall came down, East Germans that had them were selling them very cheaply to anybody that wanted to pay British pounds, American dollars, French francs, Dutch guilders, West German marks, just to have some hard currency. Since that time, however, the prices have gone up dramatically and they have become collector's items. The next one is one that I have, a bit of a personal connection with, because my mom had one of these, a Velo Selects, which was, it's very unusual. Again, they made many of these, not very fast, little two-stroke engine, I think 20 or 25 cc. And in the Netherlands, you didn't need a license for these at all. The engine would turn the front wheel from friction, and that's how you started the bike, that's how you moved on. And sometimes they were very smelly. These as well today, in good condition, if you can find them, have become collector's items and are a lot of fun. The next one actually is a Honda bike, a very unusual Honda bike, the Honda Dream C72. And this is a bike that I rode once in Japan. I had it for a couple of days from a collector who had a few of them. And I'm not saying I would own one, but the 2 days that I had it, it was a lot of fun. The problem with owning one of these is that, again, look how old the bike is. It's more than 50 years old. And parts are very difficult to get. It's been a little bit finicky at times. Certainly, of course, Honda has moved on a lot since this bike came out, but still, nevertheless, a looker. The next is a Ducati Monster 1200S. It's the only modern motorcycle on this list. It is one of my favorites. And there's this old saying. They always say that if you're a real petrol head, at some point, you must own an Alfa Romeo. I think that if you're a real motorcyclist, at some point you must own a Ducati, which is the reason why I'm actually looking for a second-hand Monster at the moment. I don't want to buy a new one because I don't intend on keeping it that long, just for a year or two, just to be able to say that I actually owned a Ducati Monster. At number 4, this might surprise people because of what I said about Harley Davidson, but yes, a Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson XA. This is pretty much a clone of a BMW R71. If you put them side by side, except for a few little changes here and there, They look exactly the same. Now, the next one is a moped, the Puch Maxi N. And this is actually the first bike that I bought with my own money. With my own money, doing a summer job. I paid around 350 guilders. And it's the same color as this one. And I bought it secondhand. And it was a moped that I absolutely loved. I was maybe 15 or 16 at the time. And I rode this thing. We'll put it this way. I killed the bike after 1 year. Because I was doing long trips on it. I mean, it's not meant for doing like 300-kilometer trips. And I was doing it on this thing. And eventually, the next year, well, the engine died. But it's still one of my favorites of all time. At number 2 is a CJ 750. Now, CJ stands for Chang 750. These were made in China by the Nanchang Aircraft Company. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union gave the design to the Chinese to have them start building these bikes as military bikes. And there were 3 variations. There was a 6-volt 750cc with sidecar, a later on 12-volt 750cc with sidecar, and then much later on a 32 horsepower 12-volt with 750 cc's. And the one that I had both of them when I was living in China, and I went, oh, well, I can tell you exactly where I went on those bikes. I went to Mongolia, both Mongolias, Inner Mongolia, Outer Mongolia, Kazakhstan, went off to India with it, part of North Korea, and I'll show you some video about that later on. Russia as well. Very easy to maintain. And the funny thing is, you can say the Chinese are the copies of a copy of a copy. So the Russians made a copy from a BMW under the Ural name. And the Chinese copied it. Well, the Chinese were given the plans and everything to make it locally. And the funny thing is, the Chinese ones are way better than the Russian ones, which is very surprising. The Chinese ones, they have don't have the same problems as the original Urals did. So yeah, and these bikes now, you can find them occasionally because a number of them have been exported. And the funny thing is, this bike was in production as late as 2009 by the Nanchang Aircraft Company. The problem, though, is people that want to buy one today, you don't want any of the ones made after 1998. You want one of the ones that were made before 1998 when they were still being made and produced for the police and military. Those ones have way, way better quality, which is unusual to say considering that it's made in China, but they were made for the military. The number 1 bike on my list has to be the Honda Super Cub. The Honda Super Cub, since it went into production in 1958, they have made over 200 million. It is a bike that is still being produced today. Of course, it's been updated. But the reason why it is one of my favorites, number 1, they look cool, easy to maintain. And if you think about what this bike did, this bike actually moved countries. It created businesses in places like Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and so on. And there are many people who had their exposure to motorcycling through the Honda Cub. So these are my favorite top 10 bikes of all time. Not the best, because there's a few on this list that I can tell you are not really the best. They're okay, and there's quite a few that do break down on the list. Anyway, if you agree with me or not, let me know in the comments section below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.